I want to introduce, I hope without any reservations, the next Texas Railroad Commissioner. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Al Lee.
Will you do it now? We're doing it. Okay. Let me tell them what we're doing.
So they don't walk out on us.
Everybody stay.
You're gonna, yeah, this is the treat here. You don't leave after this because the door's locked. Al and I are gonna do a little parody to My Way. It's called Al's Way.
Here we go.
And now, elections here, and we must face the final tally. My friend, I'll say it clear, I did what's right, voted for Al Lee. And when the counting's through, and they announce that he has won it, my friend, I tell you true, was my vote done it?
He's loved, he's laughed and cried.
I've had my fill, my share of losing, but now, as tears subside, I find it all so amusing to think I did all that
And may say, not in a shy way, oh no, not me.
I did it Al's way.
All right.
Is a man, what has he got? If not himself, then he has not to say the things he truly feels, and not the words of one who lives. The record shows my book rose, and it is Al's way.
Al, it's all yours, baby.
Thank you, Paul, for letting me mess up your act. All right, now for the good
I
part.
was really sweating that one.
He actually was.
Freeboard!
Okay, my name is Al Lee, and I'm a candidate for Railroad Commissioner of Texas. I'm going to very briefly tell you a little bit about Railroad Commissioner and about this race because there's a huge amount of confusion. There are 3 railroad commissioners in the state. They don't have districts. All of them are statewide. It's kind of like a 3-judge panel. What they're involved with has nothing to do with railroads. It has to do with oil and gas exploration. It has to do with mining of uranium and coal and gas pipelines. What they do is they regulate it, but also there is a much bigger function that they do, and that's my main attraction to the job, and that is it is the #1 front line of defense against federal government regulations. That's why I am running for this position. I believe that America is under attack and that Texas is the #1 target, and the #1 weapon that's being used is regulations by federal agencies. Now, every candidate that talks will tell you that they recognize that we've got a big problem with EPA and Fish and Wildlife and Department of Energy passing regulations that are impossible to comply with, and that's true. Most candidates and most politicians even will tell you they're going to fight against this regulation or that one. The fact of the matter is that the federal government created 40,000 new regulations in 1 year. Fighting them one by one is a losing battle. As a matter of fact, they're laughing at us for that, because they know they can create them faster than we can fight them. We just spent about $100 million to get a temporary injunction against one regulation, and politicians are beating their chest about their success. The injunction is good for a month or two, and then of course it expires, and they're going to have to carry it on further and spend another $100 million. That's one regulation. What about the other 39,999 that they haven't defeated? Other candidates and politicians will tell you that they are going to dismantle agencies like EPA, Department of Energy, and so forth. And that all sounds really good, except in the first place, they have no idea how to do it. And in the second place, it still would not win this war, because the federal government can create new agencies and czarships on a whim. As a matter of fact, the health care bill created hundreds in one fell swoop, in one stroke, created hundreds of federal agencies. So fighting this agency by agency cannot win. What nobody seems to do is take a little time to research and figure out what the source of this problem is. The source is something called administrative law. What that is laws that give these agencies the power to make rules and regulations that have the force of a law, even though nobody's ever voted on them, even though they have not been scrutinized the way a law would have to be, and even though they don't contain themselves within the boundaries that the Constitution sets forth for the federal government. So how did this ever happen? Well, you got to go back to FDR and the New Deal, 1933. That's when FDR started creating agencies to regulate the way people and businesses behaved. In order to give these agencies powers, they created these laws giving them the ability, these agencies the power to make rules and regulations and to enforce them. You can be fined money, you can have your property taken away, you can go to prison for violating a rule that a bureaucrat thought up. Never voted on, it's not a law. This is unconstitutional. Most politicians, most candidates will not tackle this because it's going to be a very difficult battle. If they would look into it a little bit more deeply, what they would find is that this is, number one, the federal government of the United States is a federation of states, not individuals. So first off, only a state has standing to challenge this, and it has to be challenged in the Supreme Court. The next thing they should learn is that the Supreme Court justices turn to things called the Federalist Papers. Some of you are probably familiar with them. Alexander Hamilton wrote Federalist Papers under the name of Publius, and number 78 is the most often cited Federalist paper by Supreme Court justices. And this is what Federalist number 78 says. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't have it memorized, but I do have it on my website. Essentially what it says is, if a body creates a law that exceeds the jurisdiction of that body, then the law is void. And the court, the Supreme Court in this case, must side with the Constitution against that law. Well, when the federal government granted powers to these agencies to tell you, for example, what kind of gasoline you can put in your car, the federal government did not have that power itself. How can it give that power to something within itself? It would be like you live in a house, and let's say you have a son, and you have a neighbor. You don't have the authority to go to your neighbor's house and take their stuff, do you? So you cannot give your son the authority to do that either, can you? Because you don't have it yourself. That's a simplification of this reasoning. This is my mission. It's why I'm running for Railroad Commission, because it is the #1 point in the state of Texas that can be a launching pad for a campaign. Now, this is not something I can do myself. However, I am very vocal, very passionate, and pretty persuasive, and so I will work to persuade the other two railroad commissioners and other commissioners like the Public Utilities Commissioner, ERCOT, TCEQ, and the Solicitor General, Attorney General, every conservative legislator in the Texas House and Senate, and the governor, that Texas needs to challenge this in the Supreme Court. And at the same time, our neighboring states have the same interest that we have, and they can join with us. This has to be states challenging administrative law in the Supreme Court. Somebody has got to lead the way. Texas is a leader among states. As a matter of fact, worldwide, one of the examples that I like to use is if you were to take a piece of paper and trace the outline of Texas on it and walk down a street in any city of Europe, in London, in Japan, in the Middle East, anywhere, and ask people, what is this? They will say, it is Texas, Texas. Everybody will know it. That does not work for Oklahoma or Nebraska, by the way. However, Texas is a leader. Other states really do look to Texas and follow. As a matter of fact, other states now where natural resources like oil and gas are being discovered, they come here to see how do we do it, how do we regulate it, how do we proceed, how do we have got 75% of the refineries in the United States along the Gulf Coast. So they all come to us, and oil and gas is being discovered all over the United States now. By the way, it's not that to say it's being discovered is not exactly accurate. Geologists have always known it was there. It was inaccessible because it was inside of the pores of rock that's like that granite countertop. And so you couldn't get it out. Something called hydraulic fracking changed that. It simply means that by using pressure, hydraulic, water, or something else, you can crack the rock, which releases the mineral, the oil or gas that's within it, and then you can extract it. That has multiplied the size of our reserves of energy 10, 20, 30 times. When the president of our country said that we use 20 or 25% of the oil in the world and we have only 2% of the oil reserves, that was a trick. We have 2% of the proven oil reserves. Proven means oil reserves where we've already got a drill and it's already pumping out of the ground. If you count the actual oil reserves, which you call potential reserves, we've got closer to 52%. The reserves of oil in the United States are larger than any other nation on earth. As a matter of fact, if you list the oil countries that have oil reserves in order of most to least, the United States is on the top, and the total is larger than the next 5 countries included, and that includes Russia, Saudi Arabia, Canada. We have lots and lots of oil in this country. There is no reason why we are buying oil from Venezuela that hates us, or from Saudi Arabia that launched the 9/11 attacks. 15 of the attackers came from Saudi Arabia, and we're buying oil from them. There is no reason for that. But federal regulations are preventing us from drilling that oil, preventing us from building refineries. As a matter of fact, they're trying to prevent us from generating electricity using coal. Half the electricity in the United States is generated using coal. But because of these regulations that are coming down from the federal government, which are absolutely absurd, they're ridiculous. The regulation requires that you cannot create more than 1,000 pounds of CO2 for every megawatt of electricity that's produced. Number one, CO2 is not a poison. If you release CO2 into the atmosphere, you know what happens? All your crops grow faster. That's what plants breathe. Number two, a typical coal-fired plant produces 18 times that, so to get them in compliance is practically impossible. It takes about $2 billion to get one plant in compliance with that regulation. So these regulations are being used not to help us, they're being used to hurt us. They're being used to stifle us. And the source of this problem is this thing called administrative law. The only way that we can win this battle is to reform administrative law. That does not mean that I think there should be no regulation. Some regulation, even Adam Smith, even Friedrich Hayek conceded that there is some need for some regulation. But there should be checks and balances on these regulations and on the regulators and on the bureaucrats, just like there are on elected officials in the three branches of our government. My name is Al Lee. I've got a sign-up sheet if you want to give me your email address to get on my email list. The primary voting is May 29th, but early voting is open now. You can, I've already voted for me, like I said in the song. And over and over, I vote every chance I can get. One time. But you can vote now, and Railroad Commission is a statewide race, so it doesn't matter where you live in the state of Texas, I will be on the ballot. And I've got a little bit of information, what we call push cards, and a flyer over there if you'd like to take one with you. And I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't want to disturb any more of Paul's show. Did you want to sing? No? Okay.
It's all yours, Al.
It's all mine? Okay, so now I'm going to sing an Elvis tune. Now, did that take guts to get up and sing with Paul? Huh? What do you think, huh? You see? Now, I embarrassed. Debbie's my wife. She has gotten beyond getting embarrassed by me, but I have two